Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Baragona. I am a GIS analyst for the Utah Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. And today I'm going to talk about our Forest Legacy Monitoring Program and the start to finish journey of contracting, design, implementation, and maintenance of an Esri-based monitoring workflow. So as an overview, we'll go over what Forest Legacy Monitoring is, the process of contracting with Esri, the Survey 123 form and report, the Integromat that goes with it, and the Esri solution that was created as a result of this process. So to begin, the Forest Legacy Program is a conservation program administered by the U.S. Forest Service in partnership with state agencies. It's designed to help private landowners preserve and protect and conserve important forested areas within the United States. Utah has a fairly robust program. We have 20 properties and a total of 29 projects. As a part of this process, the state foresters have to monitor these properties every year to determine if they are still adhering to the criteria described in the easements to continue the forest legacy status. Oh dear. There we go. So the way it was done before, we had these paper forms that they would go out and they'd have their paper form on a clipboard. They'd have a tablet or a GPS unit to get to a set of checkpoints, and they'd have a camera to capture the status. And then there's 6 people who are doing all this monitoring, and then they'd take it back to the office. They'd fill out the rest of the form, they'd get signatures, they'd send it off to get these signatures, they'd upload their photos, they'd combine them all, then they'd email them to our Forest Legacy coordinator, and she would then save the forms in the appropriate place after they've been scanned into the computer, as well as save a hard copy of the form into a filing cabinet, which is a requirement by the Forest Service. So it was quite the process. It's a little unwieldy. It's kind of hard to keep track of. And for a long time, we've known that there has to be a better way. But kind of late 2018, we had a little bit of money, and finally everything culminated knowing that Survey 123 could do everything that we wanted it to do. So what we wanted was to create a system that can be used by all of our foresters that meet all of the criteria set by the Forest Service to combine the form, the camera, the GPS into the same seamless application, and to create a report to give to the landowners and to store as per U.S. Forest Service guidelines. So we ended up contracting with Esri to get this done. We knew we could do it internally, but with Esri, it was going to happen. They were being paid to do it, and so it was going to happen within a very short timeline. Whereas if it were on our plates, other priorities come up and it gets pushed and pushed. So we wanted to get it done. We wanted to be prioritized, and who better to help develop an Esri product than Esri themselves? They're the subject matter experts, and they could give us exactly what we needed. And so we contacted our state representative, our enterprise representative, and they set us up with a contract that we were able to go through using a project manager, and we got this whole thing done start to finish in maybe 5 or 6 months. And the product turned into a multi-step workflow that started with Survey 123. So we worked closely with Esri and our Forest Legacy team to build a survey that replicated that paper form. And so I could open it here, but it works better on this. So this is what the survey looks like. And we worked hard to make it user friendly. So for example, so can take our location, and then, so depending on which area, it's going to populate which properties fall within that area, which then populates a lot of these fields that aren't going to change. So this was something that we wanted to make sure we had taken care of for our foresters, because we didn't want to create a product that was going to create more work. So this one, they can go through, and this first part is all filled out. They hardly need to do anything, which is great, because they're out in the field, and the last thing they want to do is type addresses, and this ensures continuity and just lack of errors. And as they go through, they can check off what the land is being used for, and those will populate conditionally those description boxes, create check-in points. Again, as they come up, various boxes show up. You can upload photos. Let me go through here and make sure everything is being observed correctly. They can write additional comments, any additional photos, points of interest, and then the various signatures. And again, these things are auto-populated. Like, we know that if it's being done in the Northeast area, that PJ is going to be our forester who completes it. So may as well already have him logged in here. And then the signature of the inspector, which is required by the Forest Service, and a couple other required fields, but for the most part, it's pretty easy. They can go ahead and send it. Right. Okay, well, anyway, they send it in. And when they send it in, it populates this web app here that we have for various purposes, including the report, which I'll go over in just a second. So in this app, you can zoom in to, these are all actual real reports that have been done this year, and you can zoom in to these properties. So this has the Forest Legacy property boundary, it has the starting point, and then these are all the checkpoints. You can click on them, you can see the checkpoint, you can view the image. There you go. And what we wanted to be able to do is to create smaller, more in-tune maps compared to the ones that show up in the report, which I'll go over in a second. They can be filtered by which easement it is, and they can print the area that they want to print into a JPEG that will then can get copied and pasted into this report. So the Forest Legacy easement has to be stored as a paper file in a filing cabinet. So it was important to us that this could be transferred into a report. And this was still in beta when we created it, but now it's part of the Survey 123 workflow. And so this kind of gets spit out, and formatting's a little funky here just based on the embed, but you can see this one was for our Zion Overlook property down in the southwest part of the state. And you can see all of these things are being populated here based on how the form was filled out, as well as all the photos that were captured in that moment. There's descriptions for the photos, the signatures, and some additional property photos. So nice. And for that app that I just showed, this map's a little tricky. So it's tricky to actually get the right size within the form template, the report template. So our workaround there was, it's just since our properties are different sizes and you have to set the zoom level. So that's where the app comes in, and our Forest Legacy coordinator can go and create a better map and input it in here. So instead of relying on, I don't know, just due diligence to occasionally check in and make sure all of the reporting is done and then track down the report and run the report, and for me having to train someone how to run the report and get various permissions, instead we decided to use Integromat, which has been a really great tool for us at the state. And so when a survey gets submitted, it triggers a response by Integromat. So it sends a little ping, it creates a report, it turns that report into a readable file, which then gets emailed to the Forest Legacy coordinator, as well as the forester who submitted the report, and to me, so I can just make sure everything's working correctly, and then it also gets sent to a team drive. Integromat it's got a lot of great qualities about it. Sometimes it's a little finicky, but there's a lot of different things you can do with it, and we've found it to be really useful for some of these automated processes, especially sending emails. So highly recommend. And then I think one of the coolest things that came out of this whole process was that through contracting with Esri, since they knew about it, they decided that this was a worthwhile endeavor, and they've created a solution. So you can go to this Arcgis Solutions for state government, and it's a conservation easement monitoring, and they basically took our form, kind of made it more generic, and you can now download all of the things that go into it. They made it a little more robust with the Survey 123 Connect, as well as dashboards. We didn't find those necessary. We don't have that many properties that need this. And instead of going through the Connect, we have CSV tables associated with the surveys as lookup tables that auto-populate, which is kind of what the Connect does in this. But it's pretty cool. Some of you might have seen them present this at one of the Esri user things that they had in the winter. They kind of showcase this. So kind of proud of that. And it's also nice for me, as you know, we kind of went through this, and I actually downloaded this solution to check to see what they did differently and see if there was anything I could pull in to improve our process. So some of the challenges that we faced in moving forward with this workflow is updating the form. You know, it's a new process, and we have feedback from our foresters who are actually using it in the field, but sometimes updating the Survey 123 forms can be a bit of a nightmare. And I am so thankful that there's finally a notification when you open your Survey 123 to say that there's updates. So that's been a huge help. But if there's any big changes that you then have to republish the form, that's been a bit of a hang up. And so our workaround for that is when they're done completing the form, there's a link that they can opt to send in comments, add comments to like a Google Doc. And then in the off season, like in the winter, I can go through the changes and implement those so that they're not being done mid season when they're actually collecting this data. There is definitely a learning curve when it comes to Integromat, but once you get it down, it's super useful. But there's not a ton of documentation out there that they provide. I remember there was something I was really struggling with, and I found the answer to it on a Facebook post. So it's super useful. The Microsoft Power Automate is the equivalent in the Microsoft world, but the state doesn't have big Microsoft accounts. So Integromat made more sense for us. And then finally getting this user buy-in. It's hard to change a process on someone who's been doing it for a long time, and especially when it's buggy and things aren't working exactly how they want it to work. And I totally get that. So we've worked really hard to work with our foresters to address their needs so that they will not only use this, but use this happily. So finally, just in conclusion, we created a functional workflow that facilitates the consistency of forest legacy reporting for the state. And one of the best parts of this whole process and working with Esri was that, so I was a brand new employee when we started this. It was one of the first things that I jumped into working for the state. And I learned so much about Survey 123 and everything around it that I am now the go-to Survey 123 person for, at least for forestry, but I've also worked with other people in the department, as well as I've just used a lot of these tools in other projects, using Integromat for other automated email workflows, other surveys, other reports. I often reference the XLS form for this particular survey when looking for functionalities in other surveys that I create. It's just been hugely helpful. And working with Esri, it was really a positive experience. The cost was comparable to any other contractor you might use, and the timeliness and their willingness to help and coordinate and collaborate with us was really great. Can't say enough good things. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. Here's my contact information if you have any questions about anything that I talked about or something that I missed. And thank you so much.